We have the Washington County stimulus if you'd like.
Yes, I'm going to.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Let's have the finance report. Yeah.
Good morning. As Finance Chair Schweitzer mentioned, I'm going to focus today on the budget, both the process and the implications of the proposed budget that you received earlier this month. I'd also like to start today by introducing Claire Potter, who is TriMet's Director of Financial Analysis and Grants Administration. I want to recognize her and thank her. She has been responsible for financial forecasting and budgeting. She's worked at TriMet since 1986 and is an expert on the budget process and the intricacies of the TriMet budget and long-term forecasts. And she's available to answer any questions either now or later or anytime. So thank you, Claire. I want to start by reviewing what we talked about in the Finance Committee, which is the budget process. As mentioned, the Finance Committee asked me to review this with the full board. It's not different this year, but since we have new board members, and I think we all agree it's good to review this. Anyway, we follow the process as prescribed by the Oregon budget law. It's a very defined and strict process. You as the board are the budget committee. That's not the case in smaller communities, but because we serve more than 200,000 people, we don't have a citizen budget committee, but rather the governing body is the budget committee. And then as the CFO, I am the budget officer, and we collectively are required to review the budget, provide the public notice that we've talked about, and approve and adopt a budget which is balanced. So where we are currently in the process is we've completed the internal review and the decision phase. You have the document which is in front of you. This was presented at the board briefing on April 15th and April 14th. And after that board meeting, we then publish the budget. A summary of the budget is posted on our website, so that the public is available to the public, and a budget message is included in that. And today, by resolution, you will be asked to approve sending the budget to the TSCC, the Tax Supervising and Conservation Committee of Multnomah County, as you do every year. And then in May, prior to the May board meeting on May 26th, there will be the TSCC public hearing on the budget, which is required by Oregon budget law. And then in June, at the June board meeting, the budget will be adopted. Now, between now and budget adoption, changes can be made to the budget. So there's time for review, more discussion, more input. We can change it if we see differences in the economy. But it must be adopted by June 30th because the budget provides the legal authority to appropriate funds for us to spend money. And on June 30th, the authority under the prior budget expires. So also in the budget that you have before you, as in past years, is the authority to continue to levy the voter-approved GO property tax for the GO bonds, which were originally issued in 1992. Those will be repaid fully in July 2012. Again, it was voter-approved long ago, but you need to approve the continuation of that levy. So that's an overview of the process. I'd now like to turn to talking about what's in the budget. And as everyone knows, it's a very complex budget, big budget, a lot of detail given the many activities of TriMet. There are many sources of revenue, many uses of funds, and we do everything line by line. But it is based on very simple underlying principles, and those are that revenues and expenditures must balance every year, and we build our budget from a projection of available revenues, and then we have to force our expenditures to match those revenues. We cannot deficit spend. And historically, TriMet has also had a very prudent focus on matching not just revenues and expenditures each year, but looking at what are continuing revenues and matching those with continuing expenses. So it brings a discipline to the process, and we don't use one-time only revenues to fill an ongoing budget hole. It's something that not all budget officers can say. So the proposed budget that you have before you today, what we did was started by looking at the projected revenue and the continuation of what we call trend expenditures. And that result, as Fred mentioned, is the need for we had a $27 million shortfall. So we either needed 27 million more revenue, 27 million cuts, or some combination. And what we did was to first apply 7 million of the economic stimulus, the federal stimulus money that we had, that we got 14 million last year that could be applied for operations. We split it so that we didn't blow it all last year, so we could apply it to what we thought would be another difficult year this year. And that resulted in the need for 20 million of expenditure cuts. As you know, our largest source of revenue is the payroll tax. It's approximately 55% of our operating budget, operating revenue. So the forecast of payroll taxes is critical to the budget process. It's why I focus with you every month on the local economy and the implications for the payroll tax. The forecast that we have come to, which is consistent with what other local economists are projecting, is that the underlying fiscal year 11 budget growth of payroll tax is going to be 3%. That's above the depressed levels of the current fiscal year 10. This compares to pre-recession average growth of closer to 6% historically. And it, on an absolute basis, brings our payroll tax revenues back to where we were in fiscal year 09. They were lower last year, but so it's very flat from over the last few years. The next largest source are passenger revenues. That's about 20% of operating revenues, and those have grown even faster than payroll taxes historically at 8%. For fiscal year 11, we're conservatively projecting a 2% increase in those. That's about 95 million. On the expenditure side, we begin with a projected cost to TriMet of operating the agency, given our existing obligations. So many assumptions go into that, but one of the first ones is that we assume the continuation of the current wage provisions and benefits under the union contract for both the active and retirees, because while the contract has expired, we are under state law required to do so. There are also other costs that we can't change. We issued debt in the past, so we have debt service that's paying down capital investments, and our pension contributions increase as required to meet our actuarial funding. So there's a whole list of expenditure items that we look at. So then we combine the revenue constraints, the stimulus money, the expenditures, and found the need to make 20 million of cuts. And as Fred has repeatedly said, the objective of cutting service last, it was met in this budget. So we cut overhead costs, we delayed capital investments, we're in the second year of a management wage freeze, and then the service cuts came on top of that. I also want to note, and this is in the budget message, that our budget cuts this year are on top of prior year cuts. There was no low-hanging fruit. Nothing was easy this year. If you look at where TriMet was in fiscal year 01 and where we are in 10, our non-union employees have declined by 10%. Our union employees, who are really our frontline service, have only declined by 1%. And during that same time period, our boarding rides have gone up 25%. So it's it's a tribute to the efficiency of the agency. While the cuts are painful, I did want to put that in perspective. So in summary, the budget that you have and what's posted on our website shows a total budget of capital and operating of $857 million. It's virtually the same as where we were last year, and our operating requirements are about $417 million. I do want to focus the board's attention and also the public's attention on our budget message, because I think it is a very comprehensive summary, not only of the process, but of the underlying assumptions and priorities of TriMet, and it does provide a lot of transparency and detail about the TriMet budget, and as I said, it's available on the website. So I'm happy to take any questions. I'm not going to, in the interest of time, not going to go into a lot of detail, but happy to do that either here or any other time. And again, the board will have the opportunity to make changes prior to the June adoption.